You hear it all the time, right? The economy's doing great, or maybe it's on the brink of collapse. But have you ever stopped to ask, who's actually making that call? How do we even measure the health of an economy, and who gets to decide the final score? Well, in this explainer, we're going to find out.
I mean, you see these conflicting headlines everywhere. On one side, you have the official market reports telling us everything is booming. And on the other, you have the reality for millions of people, which can be a completely different story. Just think back to 2008. While some were still talking up the market, people's life savings were literally vanishing. And that is the disconnect we're going to dig into.
So that's the big question, right? Is one side right and the other wrong? Or is it a little more complicated? Well, it turns out there isn't one single economy. There are actually several, and each one is being measured with a completely different scorecard.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at the 4 key groups who get to define what doing fine really means. We'll check out the government's official story, then Wall Street's high-stakes game, Silicon Valley's big bet on the future, and finally, the crypto world's rebellion against the whole system. Let's start with the one we hear from the most.
All right, first up, the official story. This is the world of government statistics, presidential announcements, and those big, reassuring numbers. You know, it's the baseline story we're all told about the economy, the one that's supposed to represent all of us.
Now, what's wild about this quote is the timing. This was said in August 1929, just 2 months before the stock market crash that kicked off the Great Depression. It's just this perfect, tragic example of how the official story can be completely, totally disconnected from what's actually happening on the ground.
So what is the government looking at? They're looking at the big headline numbers, GDP, inflation, and especially the unemployment rate. But you know, as we saw with the Great Depression, those numbers don't always tell you about the cracks forming just underneath the surface. And here's the thing. When that official story does break, you see what the government's real priority is. This $700 billion, that was TARP, the 2008 bailout for the very banks that caused the crisis. Look, the goal wasn't about being fair. It was about stopping the entire system from collapsing. For the government, a healthy economy is a stable one, even if it means propping up the old guard.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about a totally different player. For Wall Street, the economy is a game. It's not about jobs for everybody or long-term stability. Nope, it's about one thing and one thing only: generating returns.
And this quote from the legendary trader Jesse Livermore, it just nails the mindset, right? Wall Street is always inventing new, ridiculously complicated products. But the underlying game of risk, reward, and pure speculation, that never, ever changes.
So before 2008, Wall Street got really creative and cooked up these super complex things called credit default swaps, or CDS. On paper, they were just insurance policies on investments. But in reality, they became a way to make enormous bets on whether those investments would completely implode.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly sums up the moral black hole at the center of this. You didn't even have to own the thing you were betting against. So the health of this market was measured only by the fees and premiums getting collected, while completely ignoring the fact that they were building a doomsday machine. The system was fine because the money was flowing.
So you see, for Wall Street, doing fine just means the machine is humming along. It means their models are spitting out steady returns, even if that machine is a ticking time bomb. As long as those interest payments keep rolling in, nobody asks too many questions.
All right, let's head out west now, to Silicon Valley. Because out there, the definition of a healthy economy is, well, it's completely different. It's not about stable returns, and it's definitely not about profits. It's all about the story. It's about the narrative.
This quote, it gets right to the heart of the Silicon Valley playbook, especially when you think about something like the Theranos scandal. A great story, a killer vision that can be way more valuable than, an actual working product.
And Theranos is just the poster child for this, isn't it? Elizabeth Holmes, she sold this incredible, world-changing dream, and the Valley just ate it up. She raised over $700 million for tech that just didn't exist. And for a while, by Silicon Valley standards, she was a massive success.
And you know what? We're seeing this exact same playbook running right now with the AI boom. Success isn't about profit. In fact, a lot of these companies are losing money hand over fist. OpenAI's initial pricing was based on, and this is a real quote, vibes. For this world, the economy is doing fine if you're disrupting the future, even if you're burning billions of dollars to do it.
Okay, so that brings us to our fourth and final group. And this group, they look at the government, Wall Street, and Silicon Valley and say, nope, the whole thing is broken. For them, a healthy economy means leaving that old system behind entirely.
Yeah, this wasn't just about creating a new technology. It was a full-on political statement. Think about it. Bitcoin was born in early 2009, right in the smoking wreckage of the financial crisis and the bank bailouts. The whole point was to create a currency no government could print into oblivion and no bank could control. It was basically a declaration of war on the old system.
So what's this number? This is roughly what the 10,000 Bitcoins used to buy a couple of pizzas back in 2010 are worth today. For the true believers, this is it. This is the ultimate proof of concept, that escaping the old system is the only smart move.
But of course, there's another side to this coin. Because for every Bitcoin home run, you've got thousands and thousands of failed projects, rug pulls, and outright scams. The dream of this new financial utopia? Well, a lot of the time, it ends up looking more like a wild, unregulated digital casino with collapses like FTX wiping out billions from everyday people.
So there you have it. We've met our 4 big players, and each one has a completely different language for success and a totally different way of keeping score. So, where does that leave us?
Here's the key takeaway. Each one of these groups is playing a completely different game, with its own rulebook and its own scoreboard. The next time you hear the economy is doing fine, you have to ask yourself, fine for whom? The answer depends entirely on which game you're watching.
See, there's no single objective economy out there. It's a story, it's a narrative, and it's told by the people with the power to make you listen. So the real lesson here isn't about picking a side. It's about learning how to read between the lines of all these competing stories.
So next time you see that headline, you know the one, the economy is booming or recession looms, just stop and ask yourself, whose story am I being told? And whose economy is this really good for? And understanding that, well, that's the first step to really getting what's going on.